إن الحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. يقول سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. صدق الله العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله واللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين رب العالمين. The ayat that I just recited, quite often you hear these ayat at the beginning of a wedding and a marriage ceremony. And although these pertain to marriage specifically, meaning the relationship between the husband and the wife, these also pertain quite a bit to the family overall as an institution. And inshallah, in this khutbah, just want to deliver a reminder first and foremost for myself and for all of you, inshallah, with regards to the importance of this institution of family. And before I even get into the khutbah and I get into these ayat and where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us miraculous guidance as to how we should treat our families and how our families should be, the first thing to note is that there's a crisis going on, and this crisis has been going on for quite a while, and it's only been getting worse, unfortunately, and that is that there is an attack on this institution of family. There is a huge problem in this society and worldwide that there is no peace within the home. There is no tranquility within the household. Parents don't have good relationships with children, and a lot of times because the children are being bombarded with this message of, oh, your parents don't know you, you don't have to care about your parents, and this and that, especially in this society, right? Parents are not patient with their children, they're not tolerant of their children because there's a lot of times, especially within the Muslim community, a divide when it comes to the way the parents grew up versus the way the children grew up in this society. And even amongst spouses, obviously, the divorce rates are now above 50%. It's insane what's going on when it comes to this institution of family, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this guidance so that we may keep our families together instead of bringing them apart, and that's inshallah what we hope to do. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I actually get into this is that society is like a pyramid. When there's a foundation which is the individual, and then individuals make up the unit of family, and then families make up a community, and then multiple communities make up a nation, and then you have the entire world. And a lot of times what we do is we focus on the community level, we focus on the national level, the ummah as they say, and we forget about a lot of the individual and the family matters. And you cannot fix problems of the ummah, you cannot fix the problems of the world unless you fix what's at the bottom, which is the foundation, which is the family. If the unit of family is not fixed in this world, then the world itself will not be fixed. And we'll actually explain that in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about this in these ayat. So he says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُمْ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. I start with the ayat before these actual ayat because it gives some context to these ayat. First of all, he says, from amongst his miraculous signs is that he created you from dirt. He reminds us where we came from. He reminds us of our origins, that every single one of us is made from dirt. Now, when you think about family, when you think especially about marriage, many times there's a conflict because there's a mistreatment of one to the other, or there's a mistreatment of parents to children or vice versa, or spouse to spouse. And that is because we forget that we are all the same. That you are a slave of Allah, she is a slave of Allah, your kids are slaves of Allah. We all come from the same thing. And none of us has the authority or the right to think that I am better than anybody else, and for that reason I can treat someone a certain way. Because that's a lot of times what the cause is of these conflicts. So he immediately reminds us, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ, that don't forget Humble yourself. You are made from dirt. ثُمَّ إِذَا أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ تَنْتَشِرُونَ. And then He made you into bashar, into creatures of skin, and He let you go off in the land. We can go anywhere we want on this earth. And so what's interesting about this passage of marriage and of family is that these ayat are actually in Surah Al-Rum. Right? So have you ever thought, well, why are these ayat that are about marriage and about family in this surah called the Romans? Like, what's the idea? So what's interesting is that the surah actually begins talking about the battle between the Romans and the Persians, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم, that the Romans were defeated. And so what he's saying is that now you have these two empires that were great and that battled with one another, and one defeated one. These empires were made up of families. These empires were made up of individuals. And we'll see later that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that when there's no peace at the foundational level, then it can go to a point where there's war. And so He's talking about two great empires, and He's bringing us down, He's humbling us and telling us that, by the way, it doesn't matter how much status you have, it doesn't matter how much money you have or anything or power you have, at the end of the day you're created from dirt, even these two great empires. And we'll look at the context even more in the next ayah. Then He says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, that from amongst you, He created for you azwaja. He created for you spouses. Zawj in Arabic literally means, if you go to the literal definition of zawj, it's amazing that it actually refers to the other half. Like your other half, that's what zawj means. So it doesn't just mean spouse, in literal terms it means your other half. So He created for us from amongst us, meaning that obviously spouses, we have people in our society, in our communities, that we look to marry. We're looking to marry people within the human race. That's what this ayah means. And then He says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. He gives a few reasons why He created this institution of marriage, why He created spouses for us. The first basic reason and the most important reason is لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may find tranquility with one another. Now going back to the context of the surah, the empires, right? The surah begins with war. The surah begins talking about battle and defeat and war. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about two human beings coming together. The thing is that when two human beings come together, He tells us that the purpose of two human beings coming together is peace. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. You're getting together so that you may find peace with one another, so that you may build peace within your home. But when there's no peace, when we're not even able to fulfill this most primary basic purpose, then when you don't have peace within the home, then you don't have peace outside the home. When there's no peace inside the home, there's no peace in the community. When there's no peace in the community, there's no peace in the nation. When there's no peace in the nation, then there's no peace amongst nations. And that's how war comes. War doesn't just start randomly. There's a foundational element. It begins at the very bottom, the grassroots, as they say. The institution of family is not, there's no peace there. And that's one of the reasons. So the very beginning ingredient for our societies is peace in the family. But when you don't have peace in the home, then it expands. And you can see this even in cities where the crime rates are the highest. Those are also the cities in which there are the most broken families. There's no coincidence about this. When you have broken families in a community, then there will be a lot of crime in that neighborhood. There will be a lot of crime in those communities. There's a correlation here. And so we see that these comments aren't just about getting married. They're about family, and rather more, they are actually about humanity. So then, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Okay, let's go deeper into what this word means. This word actually comes from sukun, which means to take a break. Right? When you're learning Arabic, when there's a sukun, you take a break. So you stop reading. That's what a sukun does. And so sukun literally means to take a break. Now, let's just say an example that you're at home. The husband is at home, the wife is like, doing some work, doing some, whatever, or vice versa. And let's say the husband just tells the wife, "Can you just sit down for a sec?" And the wife says, "Okay, yeah, sure. Do you want to talk about something? Like, what's up?" He says, No, just sit down. Let's just relax for a sec." Right? Just the presence of the other person, just to take a break from everything, that in and of itself should bring you peace. And you're like, wait, that's the exact opposite. When I'm around the other person, it's not peace. I get peace when I'm not around the other person. Right? SubhanAllah, Allah tells us that we should find peace with the other person just when we're next to them. And then He says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ mawaddatan wa rahmah. And even before that, just going back to the peace aspect, the thing is that when you, and you can probably test this yourself or even look at your past and think about this. When you've had a good time at home, when you've enjoyed the company of your spouse and your children and your family members, then those days at work, those days when you go outside to the masjid and interact with other people, those days are pretty good. Because you found peace that you needed it at home, and so the peace extended outward and you were peaceful outside as well in your interactions with other people. But if you had a crummy day at home and it wasn't good and there was a conflict that happened, you're in a bad mood. There was the peace that you needed didn't come that day, and so you go out and you're just talking bad to other people. Maybe you have a down face. It's not a good day. So this is another example of how when you lack peace in the home, then it extends outward. But when you have peace, it extends outward outside the family as well. And then he says that he made for human beings two things. He said he made وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He created between you both mawadda and rahmah. Mawadda comes from the word wud, which means extreme love. Extreme love. Hub refers to love. But wud is actually, or mawadda is like the hyperbolized form, extreme love. And you witness this, for those of you especially who are married already, you know that this happens after you get married. The first few days, weeks, months, those are the times when you have this insane, extreme attraction to the other person and vice versa. And then he says, there's also an aspect of husul when it comes to mawadda. That when you're not around this person, like you love this person so much that when you're not around them for a while, then you actually start to miss them. Like you want to be with them all the time. And that's why sometimes for those of you, newly married or, have gotten married recently, a lot of times what happens, like you're just sitting at work or you're sitting at home if the other spouse is at work and you're like, hey, I miss you. Hey, I love you. Hey, what's going on? Just because you want to interact with this person, you miss them so much, you have such an attraction that you just want to talk to them, you want to interact with them. That's also what mawadda refers to. And wa rahmah. Allah also made, in addition to extreme love, He put rahmah in the marriage. He put rahmah within the family. Now what does this mean? Think about any practical marriage, generally speaking. What happens is that you have this extreme mawadda, you have this extreme love that's at the beginning, that you have at the beginning of the marriage. But then things start happening, then the in-laws get involved. And then, her mom said this, and his mom said this, or his dad said this. Oh, the cousins did this, or, he looked at me funny this way. And then you start getting annoyed with each other. Why do you keep leaving the towel over there? I told you so many times. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep doing that? Right? We start getting annoyed with the habits of the other person once we're like, okay, like now, come on, you just got to fix this. I've told you like 50 times, Like you just start getting annoyed. And so then tension starts happening within the family. And conflict starts happening. And when parents fight, then the children fight too. Or the children fight with the parents. This starts happening. And the people get older, the couples get older to the point where the love that was there at the beginning is not there. Especially when it comes to the intimacy part of it. And so the only thing that remains that will keep these people together is rahmah. Allah's rahmah. Allah's mercy. That you're merciful to one another. You care about this person so much. You have so much mercy towards this person. Although the love in that context that was there before is not there. But because you love this person in a merciful way, you're patient with them. You're tolerant with them. You accept the way they are. So he's put both mawadda and rahmah. Inna fi dhalika la'ayat liqawmi yatafakkarun. No doubt in that are miraculous signs for those who aim to reflect, for those who want to reflect, for those of us who really understand how powerful this message is and how powerful this reminder is of family and of marriage, specifically the relationship between the spouses. This reminder is for us. لِيَتَفَكَّرُونَ, that we actually constantly reflect upon this. That when we think of our family, when we think of our spouses, when we think of our children, this is actually a means of us thinking and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna fi dhalika la'ayat. There are many, many miraculous signs in this. It's not inna fi dhalika la'ayah. It's not marriage and family is not just one sign. In fact, there are many, many miraculous signs for us in that institution. And then he goes on in the next verse, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. A very interesting transition. That first he's talking about marriage, but now he starts talking about, and from amongst his miraculous signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth. Okay, well, where is this going? So let's see what kind of a lesson he's trying to teach us. And this is really where it comes around full circle. He says, and from amongst his miraculous signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth. وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. And the differences, in the variations in your tongues and in your colors, in your languages and in your races. Now, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier about the home and how when there's peace inside the home, then there's peace outside the home. The thing is that if you take the lessons from the previous verse and you're able to find peace within your family members in the home, and then you're able to have love and mercy with one another, and you're able to get over each other's differences, no matter what your wife does or your husband does or the way they are, you understand that because you were both created from dirt, you have to respect one another. You're both slaves of Allah. And you will have differences just as all people do. And you learn to respect that and you find peace in the home, then you will never go out and judge a person or put down a person or think you're better than a person because you speak a specific language and they speak a different language. You will never go out and be racist to anybody. You will never go out and be prejudiced to somebody because they look a certain way or they have a certain race and you don't, and you're a different race. This starts within the home. Even this concept of racism and prejudice, much of this starts within the home and the way we instruct ourselves and our children and the way we deal with each other at home. If we can't even be patient with each other as spouses and as parents and children, then how can we be patient and tolerant with each other and accepting of one another when it comes to diversity in the community and the society? This is something that starts at home and that we need to fix within the homes. So this concludes the first part of the khutbah, and I'd like to share another reminder in the second half. But at least for these, some of the lessons that we learn, first of all, as we discussed, that family is the foundation of society. Secondly, we talked about how we should always be humble. A lot of times because the treatment the way we treat our family members is because there's a problem with our mindset. If we remember that we're made from dirt and other people are made from dirt, and we all come from the same origin, then that will help us, inshallah. The third is that the purpose of marriage, the primary purpose of marriage is peace. Fourth, Allah has also put love and mercy inside the marriage. Fifth, it is for people who truly reflect and remember. Think about your family, think about your spouse, think about your children, think about your extended family members, and use that as a means, and remember that that's a blessing. That the fact that you have a family is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that should be a means of you getting closer to Allah. And then the final and most important thing that we learned is that when you have peace and appreciation in the home, and when you have tolerance in the home, then you have it outside the home. If you can learn to treat others well within your home, then inshallah you will be able to do that outside the home. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to apply these lessons in our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us peaceful homes, tolerant homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable every one of us to be patient with our spouses, with our children, with our extended family members, with our parents. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are able to save our families from the hellfire. Ameen ya rabbil alameen. Qawlu qawli hadha wa astaghfirullah li wa lakum fastaghfiruhu innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa wa ba'd. The final thing I'd like to say is a reminder from another part of the Quran that relates to this, and it relates to the matter of family, but I think it can hit this point home, inshallah, for all of us. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. He says, O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from the hellfire. Like, when you think about family, one of the purposes is peace, but at the end of the day, the final goal, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, is to simply save ourselves first and our families from the hellfire. Now, there are a few discrete lessons that we can learn. Number one, He says, anfusakum first. He says, save yourselves first before you save your family. Many of us, what do? We have certain bad habits, but we tell our children not to do them. You're smoking. You're watching filth when it comes to movies and Netflix and all this stuff. Like so much so that if you're watching in the living room with your spouse and then the child walks in, it's like, oh, you can't watch this. We can watch this, you can't watch this. You're not at the age yet or whatever. Like as though like morality has like different age ranges or something, right? You have bad habits, then you should fix those within yourself first. Your responsibility is to save yourself first from the hellfire, and then your family. And if you try your best to save yourself, then it will in fact help you save your families as well. Your children see this. Your children see your bad habits. Your children see what you do on a daily basis. You can't prevent them from seeing that. So when it comes to instructing your children, it goes by example. You have to fix yourself first. You have to save yourself first. And then you save your families. And then the second point that I wanted to make here when it comes to these ayat, as it relates to the institution of family, is that if we remember that our basic goal is to just save our families from hellfire, no matter how bad your kids are, no matter how much they get on your nerves, no matter how bad you think your spouse is, it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, we have the same goal. We have the same purpose. We just both want to get to Jannah. Many times we forget that. We forget that, and it makes us go astray when it comes to the direction of our family, the direction of the marriage, the direction of the children. You and I just want to save ourselves and our spouses from the hellfire. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a very, very harsh description of the hellfire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ. That its fuel is people and stones. عَلَيْهَا مَلَائِكَةٌ غِلَادٌ شِدَادٌ. On it are very harsh, very rough angels. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم. They do not disobey Allah in anything that they do. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. And they do whatever they are commanded. Imagine if God forbid, you or your family members, any one of your family members when a mother sees or finds out that her kid was in jail for one night or something, she goes crazy like, oh my God. Now imagine that, God forbid, for your kids within the hellfire. Just imagine that scene. That's how much you and I should care for our children. That's how much you and I should care for each other when it comes to family members and our spouses especially. As long as we can remember that our final purpose and our final goal is Jannah, inshallah, that is, we just want to be saved from the hellfire, then it can avoid a lot of conflicts. It can avoid a lot of problems within the household. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help every single one of us be patient and tolerant with one another within the family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to save ourselves and our families from the hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to be patient, especially with our children and our youngsters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do everything that's needed when it comes to protecting our families from the fitnas of this society. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our families and enable every single one of us to live until this upcoming Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for the mistakes that we've made in the past with our families, with our children, with our spouses, and enable us to change our ways moving forward after this reminder. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people who have peace within our homes and enable that peace to resonate not only within the homes but outside the homes in our communities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring peace within this ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and relieve those who are suffering around the world from oppression and injustice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve them of the oppression and the injustice that they are facing and give them patience through those tough times. آمين رب العالمين. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله رحمكم الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة.